Greetings, everyone, and welcome to this Food and Mouth Disease Investigation Training course designed for participants in West and Central Africa. My name is Wellington Besong. I'm your course coordinator. I will start this webinar by letting you know the agenda that we have for the day. We have 6 main points on this agenda. The very first aspect on the agenda is a keynote address from Juan Lubroth, the Chief Veterinary Officer for FAO, based in Rome. We are equally going to have another presentation on an introduction to EU-FMD, which I'm going to present myself. We're going to have a third presentation on an introduction to food and mouth disease in West and Central Africa, which will be delivered by Dr. Useni Olarum of the National Veterinary Research Institute based in Vom in Nigeria. We're equally going to have another presentation on why is outbreak investigation important. This presentation will be delivered by Melissa Maglas, who is an expert on EU-FMD control. We'll have another presentation on EU-FMD e-learning website on how to study the course. I'm going to present that equally. And thereafter, we're going to have slots for questions, comments, and responses. You will also know that after the various presentations, you will have the possibility to make some questions and comments, and you can expect to have responses from them. So we shall progress now to try to find out where you are each located. Looking at the map, we would like to know where you are. Just check on your screen and let us type on the pool. Let us know where you are. I can get Nigeria from Nigeria, Italy, Rome, Nigeria, Cape Verde, from Abidjan, the Gambia, Sierra Leone, Yaoundé in Cameroon, Dr. Kwenye. Okay, so we have an idea of our various locations now. So we'll right ahead by asking the Chief Veterinary Officer for FAO, Dr. Juan Lubroth, to give us the keynote address.
Good morning, good afternoon. My name is Juan Lubroth. I'm the Chief Veterinary Officer for the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations. And I welcome you to this training online on investigations in foot and mouth disease. And this is one of the most important things that you do out in the field. The who, when, why, where, how information that is first captured when you have a suspect case, when you're going to take samples, identify those samples, be sure that you don't traffic the virus elsewhere. So a lot you will learn on this online training course. And please be sure to ask questions online. If you don't know, if they don't have the answer, ask others and teach each other. Because this is, again, one of the most important things that you will do, and you need to do it right. Good samples to the laboratory means good results. Good information from the field means better risk management, prevention, control, vaccine strategies, for the future of the livestock health. Enjoy.
Okay. We thank Dr. Lubroth for that keynote address. We will pass straight away to the next item, which is an introduction to the European Union Food and Mouth Disease Control Program. You may probably know the European Commission for the Control of Food and Mouth Disease, which we fondly call abbreviated as EUFMD, is organized. This course is organized by EUFMD, which is a commission of the Food and Agricultural Organization based here in Rome. EUFMD is made up of 39 member states. This specialized commission was created in 1954, and the work about this commission is organized in three main pillars: Pillar 1, Pillar 2, and Pillar 3. The very first pillar is a pillar that is dedicated to improving the readiness for FMD crisis management by member states within the 39 countries of the Commission, of the European Union Commission. The second pillar is a pillar that seeks to reduce risk to members from the European neighborhood progressively, using through the progressive control pathway, and in the neighboring regions. There are 20 countries involved in that. And the third pillar of activity, which is to promote the uptake of the global strategy of the progressive control of food and mouth disease. Pillar 3 is actually the pillar that covers activities in West Central Africa, Southeast Asia, and other parts where food and mouth disease is highly endemic. The Commission holds and maintains an ever-ready network of expertise that can respond to outbreaks of food and mouth disease at all times. The objectives of the Global Food and Mouth Disease Control Strategy, that is a Pillar 3 work plan, mainly a three-pronged in approach. The very first one is improving global food and mouth disease control through the application of the progressive control pathway for the control of food and mouth disease, and also strengthening veterinary services, and lastly, improving the prevention and control of other major diseases of livestock in consonance with the OIE Terrestrial Animal Disease Code. EUFMD has a wide range of activities, the strengthening contingency planning and preparedness for 3 countries, the organized meetings, workshops, training for progressive control in endemic countries, and of course, webinars and e-learning courses such as the one we are about starting this week. EUFMD and e-learning in West and Central Africa, there are a series of courses that EUFMD has developed that targets the development of control measures against food and mouth disease in West and Central Africa. Examples of these courses include the Food and Mouth Disease Investigation Training course, which we are about to launch today for the English version. There's a Food and Mouth Disease Laboratory Investigation Training course. There's a Food and Mouth Disease Socioeconomic Impact Analysis course. There's a Food and Mouth Disease Post-Vaccination Monitoring and Evaluation course. And there's also a Food and Mouth Disease Risk Analysis along the value chain course. These courses also aim at generating networking amongst veterinarians, laboratory technicians, and other stakeholders that are involved in the control of food and mouth disease. You can find here a snapshot of the work team of the EUFMD Secretariat. you can find more information related to EUFMD by visiting this website, fao.org/EUFMD. Now I will take you now to the next aspect of our agenda, which is an introduction to foot and mouth disease in West and Central Africa. This presentation will be made by Dr. Olarum Hussaini of the Nigerian Institute for Veterinary Research, which is based in Bonn.
All right, thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to make this presentation. My name is Olaram Hussaini, a researcher with the National Veterinary Research Institute, VOM, and it's a pleasure to make such presentation to this great audience. By introduction, foot and mouth disease is an endemic transboundary animal disease in West and Central Africa, and the disease affects all domestic animals, including wildlife, those that are cloven hoofs. And it is one of the major diseases that impact negatively on trade of livestock and livestock products within the region. Foot and mouth disease is actually belonging to afterovirus of the family Pequinaviridae. And we have 7 different serotypes that actually exist. And these are serotype A, O, and C. We have Asia 1, South African Territory 1, 2, and 3. And multiple subtypes occur within each of the serotypes. In West and Central Africa, we belong to the pool 5 of this particular disease. And to date, we have 4 circulating serotypes within the region. The regional pools, as I said earlier, we have about 7 regional pools, but specifically we are talking about West and Central Africa, which belong to pool 5, and the viruses circulating in this pool 5, as I said earlier, is type O, A, SAT1, and 2. Though there are claims that serologically, particularly in Cameroon, serotype 3 of South African Territory, SAT3, has been serologically identified in Cameroon. So the disease is characterized by fever, that's the clinical sign, and lameness. You have vesicular lesion on all the hairless area of the animals, particularly the tongue, the feet, snout, and in the teeth region. The disease is highly infectious and can spread easily through contact with infected animals and contaminated material, such as formites and some, in cases where there are outbreaks, that you see the personnel going from one farm to another without proper decontamination. They could serve as a source of transmission of this particular infectious disease to other farms. And vaccination and movement control are vital instruments for the control of this disease. This is just a picture showing one of our outing, field surveillance, And this is an active FMD outbreak case that we went out for sampling, and you could see this erosive nature of the tongue caused by foot and mouth disease. And this particular lesion was actually the tree of the infection that we were lucky to collect sample from such animal. So what about the epidemiology of this disease in West and Central Africa? In fact, it is something that is very challenging, that the epidemiology in West and Central Africa is very complex. So effort to control the spread of this virus in this region is very complicated. And the reason being that we have ineffective border control, unrestricted movement of the nomadic Fulani between neighboring countries, and of course, lack of vaccination campaigns among the African countries, particularly within West and Central African region. Then we have limited knowledge of even the current circulating serotypes and topotypes within the region. So what can we do? So there is also a need, therefore, to develop a vaccine that will incorporate the serotypes and the antigenic strength that is circulating currently in the region. Let me get a point across to you people that currently there is an incursion of East African topotype 3 that phylogenetically is traceable to the East African topotype from Sudan, East African topotype 3, that was actually detected in Nigeria. So, as I said earlier, the pool 5, you could actually talk about the epidemiology, that is just a hypothesis, how these viruses are transmitted across the region. And I want to say, particularly in Nigeria, because of the market in Nigeria, the population in Nigeria, so most of African countries that have catches migrate to Nigeria for the sale of these animals, and some of them are actually coming for greener pasture like feed, water points, and Nigeria end up as the places where most of the African countries migrate their animals to, and a huge population of animals moving from places like Benin, Niger, they all end up in Nigeria, and you have some border countries like Nigeria and Mali to Burkina Faso. All this movement, as they move across country, they transmit these viruses. And of course, I earlier mentioned we don't have restricted borders. Our veterinary services are actually not too strong, and therefore we end up having challenges of these viruses crisscrossing across the nation in this region. So we talked about the risks. There are zones that actually are risk zones. And you could see from this map the area that is highlighted in red colors, where you have high animal densities, and their movement are related to trade and pastures, and also water points, as I earlier highlighted. And I said Nigeria being the country that is most populous in the region, and of course the number of cattle in Nigeria is not compared with the number of cattle across other nations like Sudan and Niger. So they move their animals for trading into Nigeria. So because of this, there are main risk factors. And these risk factors are what? No existing quarantine at the borderline. We don't have that, and we don't have effective checkpoints in this borderline. In Togo in 2016, it was advocated that maybe the region should have like a panel of moving animals across the border, which is something that needs actually to be considered. And you see, uncontrolled movement of personnel during FMD outbreak, which I said could be as a source of fomites in transmitting this disease across the farms. You see, and also we have the weak capacity of our veterinary services. I want to tell you that the problem we are having in this region is that we don't stand to our responsibility as veterinarians. And just to say that we don't really pursue this disease, and we don't really pursue to know about the epidemiology of this disease in this region. And also to mention that the disease is basically ravaging animals, and the Fulanis are helpless, but we are not really providing solution to them. And also lack of good communication within the countries of the region. We don't communicate. Since the meeting in 2016 in Togo, I don't really know if the sub-regional groups set up during the meeting are really communicating, but that was the mandate that was given by GFTAC, that we should communicate within the region to know actually the problem that is happening concerning FMD within the region. So, just to talk about samples of interest in terms of isolation, in terms of serology, we may be using ELISA. In Nigeria, we basically go after the vesicular fluid. If we cannot get the vesicular fluid within the 3 days of incubation period, we target the fresh epithelial tissue, and we could get serum sample just to identify whether these animals have antibodies to FMD. And fortunately, when you use 3ABC, you could differentiate whether this is infected or not infected, if it is a vaccine antibody. But I don't even know in the region which of the country is even vaccinating against the disease. So, and where we cannot get serum, and in a milking cow, we normally take the milk or nasal discharges for RT-PCR. And on my right, you see all the required tests for you to diagnose this disease. A virus isolation, using in Nigeria, we are using a cell culture line called ZZR, and we use 3ABC ELISA, and the VNT is a technology that up till now we are not using it because of you have to work with the live virus, and we don't have the facility to contain the live virus. So the RT-PCR and sequencing, we normally use the Fabric Institute for sequences of our isolate. Yeah, the regional control situation of FMD. FMD control is just like the progressive control pathway is an evidence-based tool by GFTAC and OIE to evaluate the progress made in the control of FMD globally. Unfortunately, most of the West and Central Africa, the PCP stages, none of the country has gone beyond PCP stage 1. So this tool is actually used in order to control FMD situation in the country. So the current status, according to the progressive control pathway, as you can see, you see the blue country, the map showing. You can see in blue countries that are actually free and are recognized free without vaccination. The ones in light blue are countries that are actually recognized by OIE to be free with vaccination. And the one that is sky blue, official control program, yes, they have endorsed, the OIE have endorsed the official control program. Then the ones you have red, because of one challenge or the other, they suspended the status, the free status of such country, like presently what is happening in South Africa. They are placed under suspension because of the recent outbreak recorded in South Africa. Then countries and zones without FMD official status are the ones in gray. You could see countries that are actually showing gray colors are the ones that they don't have official status of whether they are free or not. So this is a PCP situation in Central Africa. Let me just go to the next slide. You will see, as I have actually put it, there are 4 countries in Western Central Africa that are on stage 0. These are Cape Verde, Ghana, Liberia, and Sierra Leone. So these countries were assessed as stage 0 due to the absence of control measure on non-circulating strain, and the epidemiological situation is not known in that country. Then we have 7 countries which we are professionally assessed as stage 1. These are Benin, Burkina Faso, Cote d'Ivoire, Guinea, Guinea-Bissau, Niger, and Togo. All these countries are given the provisional status. So these countries, they actually provided evidence of compliance to stage 1 requirement, which including the assessment plan and the identification of the circulating serotype. And what I'm presenting to you is actually what was presented in 2016 in Togo. So 4 countries within the region, that is Gambia, Nigeria, Mali, and Senegal, complied with the minimum requirement for inclusion into stage 1. So based on the self-assessment questionnaire and the information provided during the meeting. And let me, at this point, I just want to pose a question here. So, because in West and Central Africa is actually a challenge that we don't even know the role of wildlife in the epidemiology of this disease. And simply because we claim that we don't have buffaloes, and I am here presenting this question for the group to discuss whether somebody have information on the role of wildlife and the epidemiology of this disease in West and Central Africa. And thank you very much for listening. And I am here to listen to some of the arguments that will be generated from this presentation and the questions that will follow for me to respond to them. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much, Dr. Hosseini, for that flashlight on the situation of foot and mouth disease in Western Central Africa. We will follow his slides with a few poll questions from what he has just discussed. We would like participants to provide answers to the following questions. So I can notice that for the first question, which of the following foot and mouth disease virus serotypes are found in Western Central Africa? 47% has said that there's type A, 15.7% type 0, South African type 2, 14%, South African type 1, 19%. Asia, 4.55%. Okay, we check the next question, which is at what frequency do you encounter clinical cases of foot and mouth disease at your various localities? 21.4% indicate it's frequent, 26%, 27% sporadic. It's rare, 19.4%. Never, 21%. I do not know, 2.56%. So some people don't even have an idea of whether the disease is present or not. Okay, I think this is good. We're going to, as the course unfolds, we are going to discover a lot of things related to these questions and get better information on the foot and mouth disease. We'll make progress, and we'll take the next presentation, which is from Dr. Melissa Maklas on the importance of foot and mouth disease investigation. I'll pass the floor to Melissa.
Thank you, Willington, and hello, everybody. My name is Melissa Maklas, and I'm a veterinary epidemiologist working with EUFMD, and I'll be joining you in this course, in the webinar, and in the discussion forums. Now, I understand a lot of you are having connection problems because I'm reading your chat, but please be aware that you will have many opportunities in the course to ask questions by participating in the discussion forum. And all of this material that we're presenting today will be available to you also after the webinar. So I hope that you can hear me and will join me in this webinar, but if not, if you don't hear well, don't worry, we have time. So I'm going to talk about outbreak investigation. And as I start, I would first like to know, do you have experience with outbreak investigation? Is this something that you do? I'm assuming many of you do. And if you do, why are you doing it? Are you doing it because farmers are calling you out to see animals who are poorly and you notice that it's FMD? Are you going out because you think it's FMD and you just want to make sure based on clinical signs? Or are you taking samples for laboratory confirmation? And it's those samples for laboratory confirmation that's very important for us to know if it's foot-and-mouth disease to begin with, and secondly, if it's caused by serotype O, serotype A, SAT1, SAT2, SAT3, so that laboratory confirmation is important. But as we'll talk about in my presentation now, there can be other reasons as well to do outbreak investigation. So I'll see if any of you are doing that. Okay, so a few of you had replied. There should be 68 attendees, and we only have about 20 people here. So please, you can click on the answer, or maybe if you're not answering, it means that you don't do an outbreak investigation. But we can see that for at least half the participants, the farmers are asking them to come out, so they're concerned about their animals. And you definitely do have experience with outbreak investigation. Okay, thank you, Alessandra, and we can continue. So in this presentation, I want to convince you that outbreak investigation is important, and also that it's got many purposes. And the first one, of course, is to, if you're called out to a sick animal or to a farm or a household where there's many animals that are sick, your first question is what's causing it? And in this case, we want to know, is it foot-and-mouth disease? And you can judge that based on the clinical signs that the animals are showing, and we'll review those in the course. Or you can also, preferably, take samples so you get confirmation from the laboratory and you know which virus is causing it. But it doesn't stop there. After you know that it's foot-and-mouth disease, you can ask questions for the farmer, and you can further examine the animals to try to identify when they became infected. And based on that information, you can identify where the disease, where the virus might have come from, how it got onto the farm, and where it went to. So we call this tracing, and we'll spend a lot of time in the course aging lesions, so you get a sense of how old they are, making timelines to identify when the virus came onto the farm, and different types of methods that it might have come on and ways you can question the farmers to learn that. And the reason that you want to understand where it came from and where it went to is to try to stop the spread of it, to understand how it's spreading, to enhance biosecurity, and to give farmers early warning that FMD is in the area and what they can do to protect themselves. And vaccination, of course, is one of the things that farmers can do in order to protect themselves, and we'll talk about vaccination in the course. As you do many outbreak investigations, you can start to understand in what circumstances the biosecurity or other measures aren't working. Perhaps the farmers aren't aware of the risks of foot-and-mouth disease. Perhaps you'll find that it's associated with movement of animals. Or in some cases, you might find that the animals should have been protected by vaccine, but for some reason it didn't work. So we'll talk about that and try to understand why, if there are measures in place, why they might not work. And finally, and very importantly, if outbreak investigations for foot-and-mouth disease or any other disease are done systematically and repeatedly over many investigations, you can start to understand what are the risk factors in your country for infection with FMD, what husbandry practices are associated with FMD, in what areas does it usually tend to occur, in what species. And by understanding that, we can target control, because resources are limited for control, and by targeting these resources, we can better control FMD. And also, over many outbreak investigations, we can start to understand what is the impact of foot-and-mouth disease. We know in individual animals that it will cause reduced milk yields milk drop in milk production, decreased growth. In some places it might cause a loss of draft power and even some deaths. And of course there's also indirect losses resulting from the loss of trade markets or restriction for trade of animals and animal products, and also the cost of control. And then over multiple outbreaks, these add up tremendously. And there's been a paper published in 2012 that estimated only production losses and vaccination at the global level cost $5 billion. So this adds up to a lot. Even though often the animals don't die and they do recover, it's still here over many outbreaks with the impact on production. Foot-and-mouth disease has a very important socioeconomic impact. So over this course, we'll explain to you and introduce you to some of the tools that you're going to need in order to do outbreak investigation. And it's a bit like detective work. So you need to put together the puzzle of what you're seeing on the farm, together with knowledge about how the virus spreads and the epidemiology of foot-and-mouth disease. And then you can use clinical and laboratory techniques to enhance this, to enhance your understanding of what's going on the particular premises. By looking at the animals and studying the lesions, you can identify the oldest lesion and then use that information to make a timeline. And this is a picture of a timeline at the bottom of the screen. So this is a timeline showing the date that you're visiting is the 1st of December, looking back to when the animals first showed clinical signs based on the lesions, and then subtracting the incubation period to get a sense of when you should be questioning that these animals actually got infected with foot-and-mouth disease. And through systematic data collection and analysis over that particular outbreak, as well as many outbreaks in the country, we can start to understand how foot-and-mouth disease is spreading, and especially how it can be controlled. Okay, so just to have an idea about how confident you are going into the course making a diagnosis, I'd like to know if you would feel confident if you were faced with an animal that was showing clinical signs of a disease, would you be able to say if it's foot-and-mouth disease or not? Okay, so it seems like most of you have some experience. Some of you don't, but don't worry about that. That's why you're doing the course. I hope that after this course, you're very familiar with how to make a diagnosis of foot-and-mouth disease, and that you can use that knowledge in your practice. So beyond just making a diagnosis of foot-and-mouth disease, in this course we're going to go through some of the more challenging situations that you might find yourself in. So at the end of the course, you should be able to know what to do if you're not sure. You should be confident about what samples to take and what tests to request the laboratory to do. You should know which animals are best to sample, which lesions are best to sample, how many samples to take, and when you should do something called a probang, and how to do that. Okay, so these are some of the aspects we'll cover in the course, as well as more. Now, I mentioned before timelines, and in order to make a timeline, this question of aging lesions is really critical, because what you want to do in the outbreak investigation is to try to examine all of the animals and identify which one has the oldest lesion. So if you look at this picture here, and it's much more difficult in a picture than it is in real life, but what do you estimate that how many days old is this lesion? Okay, so I can see in the poll here that there's a range of answers, with most people saying 4 days old. And I would agree with those people who say the 4 days, because you can see here that the edges aren't really sharp, that they're a bit blunted, that the tissue underneath isn't bright red, but it's a little bit white. And critically, there's this white material here, which is fibrin, indicating that it's beginning to heal. So all these signs here, or all these factors or indicators, they would suggest that this is a 4-day lesion. And in the course, we're going to show you what is typical of a brand new lesion: 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, 4 days, and you can see the progression of lesions, which is very consistent across animals, and it's the same no matter what type of virus. If it's serotype O or A, this progression of lesions is always the same. Okay, thanks, Alessandra. So, but as you're doing foot and mouth disease investigations, you need to remember biosecurity. That's very important, because foot and mouth disease is one of the most contagious diseases that we have, if not the most contagious diseases of animals. And so it's important that while you're investigating, that you don't spread the disease. So why is this foot and mouth disease virus so contagious? Why does it spread so easily and rapidly? Well, firstly, it has many possible hosts. So if it's possible that a cow can infect a sheep, who could infect a pig. So many different animals are susceptible. And these animals have a very high morbidity. Many will come down and become infected, but very few will die. So this means that virus can continue to be shed without being stopped should the animal die. So this high morbidity is a factor. And they can shed virus even before showing clinical signs. So this means that they could be moved, they could be sold, they could be purchased while they appear to be healthy, which facilitates the spread of disease. And it takes a very, very low dose of the virus in order to transmit the virus. But animals shed a lot of virus. Okay, so just a single bit of saliva from an infected animal will have many, many virus particles, of which very few are needed to cause infection. Some animals, particularly sheep and goats, are prone to subclinical infection, meaning that they can hide the infection and no precautions will be taken. And I don't know if you have pigs in some of your areas and practices, but if you do, they can shed very high quantities of virus. And so that's something to be aware of. So we haven't talked yet about how foot and mouth disease is transmitted, but from your knowledge, which one of these routes is most likely to cause foot and mouth disease to be transmitted from one animal to another? Is it through contaminated objects, through direct contact, airborne spread, or consuming animal products? So which one of these is most efficient at transmitting foot and mouth disease? Okay, so most of you are choosing the direct contact. And that is usually the most effective way, or the most sure way, that if one infected and one susceptible animals come in direct contact with each other, that's how the virus is going to be transmitted most effectively. Contaminated objects or people can certainly also cause transmission, so that's correct. And in some instances, the virus can even be spread by the air, but this happens much less commonly. Consuming animal products. Contaminated animal products can actually be a cause of spread of the disease. This most often happens with pigs, because pigs are carnivores and will eat contaminated meat, for example, and this can be an important route of spread, particularly over long geographic distances. And this is a common way that foot-and-mouth disease can enter countries that are usually free. But in a situation where the disease is endemic and animals are infected, direct contact is the most common route of spread. Okay, and also Dr. Kola, people are also saying it in the chat, so that's good. So again, to emphasize how important biosecurity is, and to remember as you're going through this course, and then after the course as you're applying your knowledge, remember that veterinarians going from farm to farm are a risk for spread. But as you'll learn in the course, this virus is not a super virus. I mean, it's super in that it's very contagious, but it's not super in that it's possible to inactivate the virus fairly readily. So by understanding how to inactivate the virus and how to protect the farms, it is possible to prevent this spread. And this is my last slide, but I'd like to come back to the progressive control pathway that Dr. Husseini mentioned, and put some context with outbreak investigation. So most countries in West Africa are in PCP stage 0 and PCP stage 1, meaning that the risk factors for foot-and-mouth disease are not understood or not well understood, or that countries are in the process of understanding them and developing a control plan based on those risks. So through outbreak investigation, it can allow us to understand how much FMD is circulating, where it's circulating, what is the impact of this disease on which populations of animals and their owners, what are the causative serotypes and strains, which is very important when it comes to selecting a vaccine that will be effective, and finally, what are the risk factors related to an FMD infection. And once we understand those risk factors, then we can target and make an effective control program. So thank you very much for listening to me today. I hope that the connection was okay. And Willington, I'm not sure if we have some time for questions or if we want to continue and take them at the end. Actually, the participants, if you type them into the chat box here, then perhaps Willington can do his next few slides, and then I can come back after you've typed any questions and answer them at the end. Is that okay, Willington?
Thank you very much, Melissa. I think the questions, we can transpose the questions on the discussion forum, which, given that we have just a few minutes to go, we could they can post, when I introduce the discussion forum to them, they can put these questions there so that we can continue from there as the days go by.
Okay. Thank you. We don't see your webcam. Maybe.
It's on. Okay, we will go to the next aspect on the agenda. which is dedicated to letting you know how we're going to go about this course. First of all, the purpose of this course is to equip trainees with the background knowledge that they will need to do diagnosis and investigate foot and mouth disease, as Melissa has given a summary just a while ago. It's of importance to note that this course is a tutored course. There are tutors that are drawn from a wide variety of expertise within foot and mouth disease control that are going to accompany you during the course of this training. The course materials are in the form of modules. There are actually 7 modules. You equally find videos and colored images and to support the modules. There is also a bank of knowledge which you can consult to have more information on as we go ahead. This course team is made up of Nick Lyons, who is an epidemiologist and the manager of Pillar 3 work plan, myself, your course coordinator. You equally have Etienne, who is an animal health officer, who is a trainer in this course. And of course, you've met Melissa just a short while ago. She's an epidemiologist, and she's going to keep following us with guidance as the course unfolds. There is also Jenny Moat, who is an animal health officer and e-learning manager. We equally have on board Chiara Aderi, who is an e-learning logistics expert. We equally have Alexander Alberti, who is equally an e-learning logistics expert. And there are lots of other people, lots of other experts who will be joining us as the course goes on. How do you get started? In a few hours from now, at the end of this webinar, you will receive an email with your username and password and full details of how to get started. The website, I'll remind you, I'm sure some of you are already aware of this, is https://eufmdlearning.works. And once you are there, when you click on My Courses or the dashboard, you can be able to access the courses. In case you have any difficulties, you can always send an email to eufmd-training@fao.org. Now, the course modules, like I said, there are 7 of them. The very first one, which we're going to start as from now, is on pathogenesis. The second module is on clinical diagnosis. The third module is on laboratory diagnosis. There is a 4th module which is on epidemiology and outbreak investigation. A 5th module on biosecurity. A 6th module on vaccines and vaccination. And the 7th module, which is introduction to the progressive control pathway. There are 2 main webinars for this course. This opening webinar we are having, we are equally going to have another webinar at the end, towards the end of the course. You know, this course will last for 4 weeks. It's a course that you have to be studying at your own convenience, at your own as your time permits. But like you saw on the brochure for this study, this course is actually designed, technically speaking, to be covered within 12 hours of intensive studies. But by virtue of the fact that you have different activities, we have tried to spread it to cover 4 weeks so that we can follow up within these 4 weeks and do evaluate to find out if the outcomes are actually achieved within this period of time. To assess information, I know some people will have some, as we are already noticing, some people in locations where there's limited connectivity. You can download, you can maybe go to where the internet is fast. You can go, most hotels in most African countries have a good internet connectivity. You could go there and download download the course for the week, or some of you have offices where you're in the office, you can download this course, or some other places where the internet connection is quite good. Don't rely on the internet that you have at your various house. Perhaps it may not be strong enough, but routinely, if you have good internet connectivity, you can be able to follow up these courses using this directly from slide to slide or online. But where your internet connectivity is not good, we strongly advise that you download the course modules, read them, digest them very well, and then you put on your queries on the discussion forum, which I'm going to show to you. And this course also, because of these problems that we observe in West Central Africa with connectivity, we have given it the possibility for WhatsApp interaction, where we can provide information in PDF, and some people can, on the go as they are going about their activities, can raise questions on the WhatsApp forum. So if you have colleagues who are still having difficulties, let them send us their contacts, and we're going to hook them up on the WhatsApp forum so that we go keep along together. The online discussion forum, when you log on to the study area on the e-learning site, you will find the online discussion forum. This tool is part of is very, very important. After you must have been able to download your course materials, it's very important that you follow meticulously the discussions that are going on in the forum, because this is what actually gives the classroom effect. We would like to welcome your comments, your questions relating to observations that or queries that you have with the course on this platform. The most appropriate place to do is to put on this discussion forum. And it's very important that we keep the discussions in a very organized way. If someone raises up a theme for discussion or an issue which is being discussed, and your response or your comment is in the same line, it would be better for you to keep it on the same thread. That is to say, you have to pin it to that same discussion. You don't open up a new discussion or a new subject. So, and you will also notice that we are tying your email address with all these discussions. So as the discussions are going on the discussion forum, you can equally find them reflected on your email inbox. So, like I said, for those with limited access to internet, we have made a conscious effort to create a WhatsApp forum. And if it's very difficult for you even to work on WhatsApp on your handset, on your mobile phone, you can download or work on the WhatsApp web, where you can work more conveniently. So all the modules of the course shall be sent as PDF through this WhatsApp. But you have to understand that on the modules that we send on the WhatsApp app, they are not interactive, which means you will not be able to have links directly on them when you are offline. The discussions in the WhatsApp forum is very much encouraged and will be considered as well when we are assessing participation. So you need to rest assured that we are here to help. Like I mentioned before, there is a host of experts at your disposal where you can raise questions. They're going to be able to respond to you within 24 hours. Ask many questions as you can. Take your time also to read and respond to questions posted by your colleagues. We also we'll also be able to ask you questions from time to time. Within the week, we are going to send you some questions which we expect you to respond, and your response will constitute part of the way we're going to evaluate you. Please don't be shy. We are in the class. We are all learning, and learning has no age limits. So we also all have to learn to improve on the things we are doing. At the end of the course, there's going to be an assessment. This assessment certificate shall be awarded to participants on 3 conditions. The very first condition is those who have successfully completed all the 7 course modules. As you log on to these modules, we have a way to follow up to know you are following up these modules. We also will consider that you take the complete final evaluation test and obtain a satisfactory score. For those with limited internet connectivity, we will want to ensure that you make at least one contribution in the WhatsApp discussion forum. So if you have a few questions, you may just raise a few general questions. We are out of time slightly. If you have a few pertinent questions, you can raise. If not, if you raise questions, if we can still transpose these questions on the discussion forum, and then we continue from them after the opening webinar. It is very important to note that this opening webinar is just for today. We have had experiences where some people thought every other day we'll be speaking online. No, it's just for today that we're having this opening webinar. The rest of the time you'll be on your own. We are going to send you materials. We are going to be discussing with you on the discussion forum. Thank you. I wait for any questions that you have. Okay, Geoffrey cannot hear us. Okay, I want to thank you very much. I encourage you to, there are a few questions, there are cell phone contacts that have been provided. We will take all this into consideration and hook you up and connect you to the WhatsApp forum. Okay, you should know for your colleagues who have not been able to follow up this opening webinar live, they should be rest assured that we are going to provide them a link where they can listen to it, because it has been recorded. They can be able to listen to it. Even you yourselves can have a playback of it to follow the discussions that we just had. With that, I think we have exhausted our agenda, and I sincerely want to thank you very, very much for your time, and it has been a very, very wonderful pleasure for me interacting with you today. Thank you very much.